Hello. Today we are reading A Lesson Before Dying, Chapter 2. Alright. When I came home from school that afternoon, I saw my aunt and Miss Emma sitting at the table in the kitchen. I was sorry for now that I had come directly home, because Miss Emma was the last person I wanted to see. Just like everyone else in the quarter, I knew what the sentence was going to be, and I didn't want to have to look into her face. I hurried to my room with the satchel of papers that I had brought from school to work on that night. After laying that satchel on the table that I used as a desk, I sat down on the bed as quietly as I could. Neither my aunt nor Miss Emma had seen me come in, but they knew it was the time of day for me to be there. I tried to think of a way to make a quick appearance in the kitchen for courtesy's sake and then leave. I didn't want to look into that face any more than I had to. It was late October, and though I wore a wool shirt under my jacket, I was a little cold. I thought how nice it would be to sit inside the Rainbow Club in Bayonne. I had a lot of work to do, but I didn't feel like being there, not as long as Miss Emma was in the house. I couldn't hear a sound from the kitchen. I wondered if I could sneak out of the house before my aunt saw me. I got up from the bed, and I was near the door when I heard footsteps in the bedroom. I hurried back to the table and took some papers out of the satchel. When she came into my room, I had sat down at the table and was pretending to read. She stood looking at me. "Ain't you going to speak to Miss Emma?" she said. "I was going to. I was just looking for some papers." "She wants to talk to you." "What about?" I asked. "She can't tell you." "She can tell you." "I have to go to Bayonne, Tante Lou," I said. "Something for the school." "I'm sure this won't take all day." "The store closes at 5, Tante Lou," I said. "It's almost 4 now." "You can spare a few minutes," my aunt said, "especially today." She didn't say any more. She didn't have to. She was sure I knew what had happened. We looked at each other a moment. Then I looked down at the student's paper that I had taken from the satchel. The 4th grade writing was nearly illegible, but even if it had been typed, I would not have been able to concentrate long enough to read it. My aunt, standing back watching me, knew I was not reading. I pushed the papers away and followed her through her room, back into the kitchen. Miss Emma sat at the kitchen table, staring into the yard. I started to speak to her, but I wasn't sure that she even knew I was there. "Sit down, Grant," my aunt said. Equals Jeff. I can stand, Tante Lou." "Sit down," she said. She sat down first, next to Miss Emma, so that I would have to sit opposite both of them. In this way, they could look at me at the same time, or take turns. "How are you, Miss Emma?" I said. "Making out," she said. She stared out into the yard. My aunt looked down at the table, and I waited, afraid to even think of what Miss Emma might want to speak to me about. Miss Emma was in her early or mid-70s. Emma? Mid-70s. My aunt was in her 70s. Aunt? 70s? And I figured they were pretty much the same age. Miss Emma hair was gray and combed up and pinned on top. I had noticed her floppy brown felt that had her overcoat on my aunt's bed on our way back into the kitchen. Her name was Emma Glenn, but no one expected her closest. Oh, okay. So his name is Jefferson Grant, and Emma Glenn. Her name was Emma Glenn, but no one expected her closest friends and the white people on the river ever called her anything but Miss Emma. Her husband, who was dead now, had called her Miss Emma, and she called him Mr. Oscar. And Oscar's my name, by the way. And she had called him Mr. Oscar, and that is now and that is how we on the plantation had grown up addressing them. Except for Jefferson, he called her Nana, Nana, and he had called Mr. Oscar Parain, parent, godmother, and godfather. Miss Emma continued to stare into the yard, but I was sure she was not seeing anything out there. There was nothing out there to see but the jimson weeds and crabgrass, and the rows of cane that ran parallel to the yard and about 100 feet away from the kitchen, where we sat. Miss Emma was not seeing any of that. She was remembering, she was thinking. She was not seeing. Call him a hog? She said that, and it was quiet again. My aunt looked at me, then back down at the table. I waited. I know he was just trying to get him off, but they didn't pay that no mind. Still give him death. She turned her head slowly and looked directly at me. Her large dark face showed all the pain she had gone through this past weekend. No, the pain I saw in that face came from many years past. I don't want them to kill no hog, she said. I want a man to go to that chair on his own 2 feet. I waited, not knowing what was coming, but she was finished talking. Now both she and my aunt looked at me as I thought I was supposed to figure out the rest of it. We started at one. We stared at one another a few seconds before what they expected began to dawn on me. Wait, I said, wait. Neither one said a thing until I started to get up, and my aunt told me to sit back down. Sit down for what? I asked her. Just sit down, she said. I settled back on the chair, but not all the way back. I was ready to get up at any moment. You don't have to do it, Miss Emma said, looking beyond me again. Do what? I asked her. You don't have to do it, she said again. It was dry, mechanical, unemotional, but I could tell by her face and by my aunt's face that they were not about to give up on what they had in mind. What do you want me to do? I asked her. What can I do? It's only a matter of weeks, a couple of months maybe. What can I do that you haven't done the past 21 years? You're you the teacher, she said. Yes, I'm the teacher, I said. And I teach what the white folks around here tell me to teach. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. They never told me how to keep a black boy out of a liquor store. You watch your tongue, sir, my aunt said. I sat back in the chair and looked at both of them. They sat there like boulders, their bodies, their minds immobile. He don't have to, Miss Emma said again. He going to do it, my aunt said. Oh, I said. Oh, I said. You gon' do it, she said. We're going up there and talk to Mr. Henry. Talk to Mr. Henry Pichot? For what? I asked her. So you have the right to visit Jefferson. What's Henry Pichot got to do with this? His brother-in-law is the sheriff, ain't he? I waited for her to say more, but she did not. I got up from the table. And where you think you're going? And where you think you going? Tante Lou asked me. To Bayonne, where I can breathe, I said. I can't breathe here. You ain't going to Bayonne till you go up there quarter, she said. You gon' see Mr. Henry with me and Emma there. I had walked away, but now I came back and leaned over the table towards both of them. Tante Lou, Miss Emma. Tante Lou, Miss Emma, Jefferson is dead. It is only a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months, but he's already dead. The past 21 years we've done all we could for Jefferson. He's dead now, and I can't raise the dead. All I can do is try to keep the others from ending up like this. But he's gone from us. There's nothing I can do anymore, nothing any of us can do anymore. You going with us up there, quarter, my aunt said, as though I hadn't said a word. You going up there with us, Grant, or you don't sleep in this house tonight. I stood back from the table and looked at the both of them. I clamped my jaws so tight that veins in my neck felt as if they would burst. I wanted to scream at my aunt. I was screaming inside. I had told her many, many times how much I hated this place, and all I wanted to do was get away. I had told her I was no teacher. I hated teaching, and I was just running in place here. But she had heard me before, and I knew what no matter how long I screamed, she would not hear me now. I'm getting my coat. I'll be ready to go, she said. Emma? So, chapter 2 tells us that this Grant is a teacher. I think he's black because he says, teach what the white people teach me, tell me to teach. So Grant is black, a teacher of Jefferson, who is told to visit him, but must ask the sheriff, Mr. Henry, for permission. Grant thinks Jefferson is already dead. And he can't do anything about it. But his aunt and Miss Emma tell him he must help. Miss or aunt, otherwise known as Tante Lo. Tante, I think, is French. To help. Alright, so that wraps it up for chapter 2. We will read chapter 3 later. Goodbye.